Have you ever completely snapped at someone you love over something ridiculously small? Like, they left a cup on the counter, and suddenly you're having a full-blown argument about respect and consideration? And then later you're sitting there thinking, okay, that was definitely not about the cup. Or maybe you've told yourself you were just a little frustrated with something when deep down, there was actual anger brewing that you didn't want to admit to yourself. Here's the thing that nobody really talks about. The words we use to describe our emotions actually matter way more than most people realize. When you mislabel what you're feeling, you end up reaching for the wrong tools to fix it. It's like trying to hammer in a screw. It just doesn't work, and you keep getting the same bad results over and over again. So today we're going to dig into the 3 negative emotions that people confuse all the time: annoyance, frustration, and anger. And I promise, once you understand the real difference between them, you'll finally know exactly how to respond to each one in a way that actually works. Before we dive into each emotion individually, let's zoom out and look at the big picture for a second. These 3 emotions, annoyance, frustration, and anger, they're not 3 completely separate things. They actually exist on a spectrum, kind of like a sliding scale. And what determines where an emotion lands on that scale comes down to 2 main factors: how intense the emotion feels, and what's actually causing it in the first place. Now, I like to think about it using 3 simple analogies that really help clarify the differences. Annoyance is like having a tiny pebble stuck in your shoe. It's uncomfortable, it's irritating, but it's not going to ruin your day, unless you ignore it for too long. Frustration is like standing in front of a locked door that you really need to get through. You've got somewhere to be, you're trying everything, but the door just won't budge. And anger? Anger is when you realize that someone deliberately locked that door, and then they hid the key from you on purpose. There's intention behind it, and that changes everything. So keep those images in mind as we break down each emotion, because they'll help you recognize what you're actually feeling in the moment. Let's start with annoyance, which is the lightest of the 3 emotions we're talking about today. Annoyance is like your brain's gentle nudge that says, hey, something's bothering you here. It's not screaming at you. It's not setting off alarm bells. It's just this low-level emotional signal that something small is getting under your skin. What actually causes annoyance? Well, annoyance usually comes from things that are repetitive, minor, and feel a bit disrespectful, but they're not massive violations. We're talking about things like someone chewing really loudly next to you at work, that one notification sound on your phone that goes off every 5 minutes, your roommate who always leaves their dirty dishes in the sink, or that coworker who interrupts you in every single meeting. Notice the pattern here? These things are small on their own, but they keep happening. And that repetition is actually a huge part of what makes annoyance so tricky. Here's where most people get stuck. Because annoyance feels relatively small, most of us think, it's not worth saying anything. I don't want to be difficult. I'll just deal with it. So we push it down. We ignore it. We tell ourselves it's no big deal. But here's what actually happens when you do that. You ignore it once. You ignore it twice. You ignore it 10 times, 20 times. And then one day, seemingly out of nowhere, you absolutely explode. Your roommate leaves one more dish in the sink, and suddenly you're yelling about how they never respect shared spaces and you're tired of being treated like a maid. But here's the truth. You're not really angry about that one dish. You're angry about the accumulated disrespect that those dishes represent. You're angry about the pattern of behavior that you never addressed early on. And the worst part? The other person is probably completely blindsided. From their perspective, you just lost it over a plate. They don't see all those times you said nothing. They don't know about the growing resentment you've been carrying. So what's the actual fix for annoyance? The solution here is what I call early boundary setting. And it's way simpler than you think. You're not trying to have some big, dramatic confrontation. You're just having a quick, calm conversation about the specific behavior that's bugging you. For example, hey, I've noticed the dishes have been piling up in the sink. Would you mind washing yours after you use them? It would really help keep the space clean for both of us. That's it. You're not attacking their character. You're not bringing up every time they've ever annoyed you. You're just addressing the one specific thing early on before it builds up into something bigger. The key word here is early. The earlier you address annoyance, the easier the conversation is. Wait too long, and you'll be carrying so much resentment that even the calmest conversation will have an edge to it. Alright, now let's move on to frustration, which is really interesting because it works completely differently than annoyance. The big difference with frustration is usually not about a person at all. Frustration is about obstacles, tasks, and goals. It's that feeling you get when you're trying to accomplish something, you're putting in genuine effort, but something keeps blocking your progress. What causes frustration? Frustration shows up when there's a gap between your effort and your results. You're working hard, you're following the steps, but things just aren't working out the way they should. Some real-life examples. Your computer crashes right before you save an important document. You're trying to assemble furniture, but the instructions might as well be written in hieroglyphics. You've been on hold with customer service for 45 minutes, listening to the same terrible hold music on loop. You're learning a new skill, and no matter how much you practice, you just can't seem to get it right. Notice how all of these situations have something in common. You have a clear goal, you're actively trying to reach it, but something is standing in your way. And that creates this unique emotional experience. What frustration actually feels like. At its core, frustration is a feeling of powerlessness. It's that sinking sensation when you realize that no matter how hard you try right now, you're stuck. You're spinning your wheels. You're putting in effort that isn't translating into progress, and that can feel incredibly demoralizing. Sometimes frustration can even make you feel a bit stupid or incompetent, even when that's not true at all. Your brain starts asking questions like, why can't I figure this out? Why is this so hard for me? Is everyone else finding this easier than I am? And if you sit in that frustration for too long without addressing it, it can spiral into something worse, maybe anger at yourself or even just shutting down completely and giving up. So what's the fix for frustration? Here's where frustration differs from annoyance. You can't really set a boundary with a broken computer or a confusing instruction manual. The solution isn't external. It's internal. You need to change your relationship with the obstacle. There are really two main strategies that work here. Strategy 1. Reframe how you're thinking about the situation. Instead of thinking, I'm terrible at this, why can't I figure it out? Which just makes you feel worse, try reframing it. This isn't a reflection of my abilities. This instruction manual is genuinely poorly written. Lots of people struggle with this. Or if you're learning something new. Of course this is hard right now. I'm literally teaching my brain something it's never done before. Struggle is part of the process, not a sign that I'm failing. That shift in perspective doesn't make the obstacle disappear, but it takes away that crushing feeling of incompetence. You stop beating yourself up, and you can approach the problem with a clearer head. Strategy 2. Step away and come back later. Sometimes the best thing you can do when you're frustrated is to just walk away for a bit. Take a 10-minute break. Go for a walk. Do something completely different. Let your brain reset. You'd be surprised how often you come back to the same problem after a break and suddenly see a solution that was invisible to you before. Your brain was too locked into one way of thinking, and stepping away gives it permission to approach things from a new angle. The bottom line with frustration is this. You're trying to solve a problem that's blocking you, so you need to either change how you see the problem, or give yourself space to approach it differently. Okay, now we get to the big one, anger. Anger is the most intense emotion we're covering today, and it's also the most misunderstood. A lot of people think anger is just bad, or something you should never feel, but that's not true at all. Anger is actually a really important emotional signal. It's your brain's alarm system telling you that something serious has happened. What causes real anger? Anger almost always shows up in response to a boundary violation, unfairness, or injustice. It's not about small annoyances or obstacles. It's about someone crossing a line that really matters to you. And usually, there's an element of intentionality or disregard involved. Let me give you some examples so you can feel the difference. Someone shares private information you told them in confidence, even though you explicitly asked them not to. A family member repeatedly dismisses your feelings or invalidates your experiences. A friend borrows money from you and then ghosts you instead of paying you back. Your boss takes credit for your work in a meeting. Do you feel the difference in weight compared to annoyance or frustration? These aren't just inconveniences, these are violations. These situations involve trust, respect, and boundaries that matter deeply to you. What anger actually feels like. When you're genuinely angry, your body knows it. Your heart rate goes up. You might feel heat in your chest or face. Your jaw might clench. Your thoughts start racing, replaying what happened over and over. You might even imagine confrontations or arguments in your head. This is because anger activates your brain's threat response system. Your brain perceives the boundary violation as a genuine threat to your well-being, your values, or your sense of self. And so it floods your system with energy to defend yourself or fight back. The tricky part is that when anger takes over, it can hijack your ability to think clearly. That's why people say things they don't mean when they're angry, or make decisions they later regret. The emotional part of your brain is running the show, and the rational part has taken a back seat. Here's the trap people fall into with anger. A lot of people try to suppress anger completely because they think it's wrong to feel it, or they're worried they'll lose control if they acknowledge it. So they push it down, deny it, or try to convince themselves they're just frustrated or disappointed. But suppressed anger doesn't just disappear. It either comes out sideways, maybe as passive-aggressive comments, withdrawal, or resentment, or it eventually explodes in a way that's way more intense than if you'd addressed it early on. On the flip side, some people express anger immediately and intensely without any filter, which can damage relationships and make the actual problem harder to solve. So what's the right way to handle anger? Anger needs a two-step approach, and both steps are crucial. Step 1. Calm yourself down first. You cannot have a productive conversation or solve the problem while your brain is in full-on threat mode. You just can't. So your first job is to bring your nervous system back down to baseline. This might mean taking some deep breaths, really deep ones where you're breathing from your belly, not your chest. It might mean stepping outside for a few minutes, splashing cold water on your face, going for a quick walk. Anything that tells your body, we're not in immediate danger. We can think clearly again. How do you know when you're ready? When you can think about the situation without your heart racing. When you can imagine having a conversation without immediately feeling defensive or aggressive. Step 2. Address the boundary violation directly and clearly. Once you're calm, that's when you address what happened. And you do it in a way that's direct but not attacking. You state what happened. When you shared what I told you in confidence, even after I asked you not to, you explained the impact. It broke my trust. I felt exposed and disrespected. And you set the boundary for the future. I need to know that when I tell you something is private, it stays private. That's non-negotiable for me. Notice what you're not doing. You're not calling them names. You're not bringing up every past mistake. You're not yelling or trying to make them feel terrible. You're calmly but firmly addressing the specific violation and making it clear what needs to change. This is how you handle anger in a way that actually protects your boundaries and preserves the relationship, if the relationship is worth preserving.